Hey, I'm Jim Search, and welcome to Understanding Upstate, the podcast dedicated to exploring what makes upstate New York such a unique place. Each week, my co-host Rob Adler and I dive into a new upstate topic to better understand what's up upstate. And this week, we look at some of upstate New York's contributions and inspirations to the horror genre of film.
Woo! I already burned my boo, yeah, but Jim, it's so good, I'm going to say it again. Boo, yeah.
There it is. Yeah, it's so nice it had to happen twice.
It's true. I mean, it's going to happen at least 4 times next year when we inevitably bring back spooky topics, which...
Sure.
I mean, this is the spookiest of days if you're listening to it on release day. It's Halloween.
This is
Hallows
Halloween
Eve itself. How about that?
This is the day, man. This is the day to bust out your costumes and terrify people.
Yeah. And we've got we got a nice. This is the 5th. We had 5 Fridays this month, so we had to do. Well, no one made me do research, but I did do a lot of research for these episodes. And a lot for last week's episode was pretty heavily researched, and this one as well. I had a lot of fun digging into some of the inspirations for horror film and influence. I think influence is a good upstate New York's influence on horror.
Sure,
is probably the more succinct way to say it.
And as I have stated on numerous occasions, pretty terrifying place.
It's true.
I mean, there's definitely some horrors of upstate New York that have been lived by many.
And we're gonna talk about many fictitious and real, as we have in many episodes this month. But hey, Jim, before we talk about some spooky movie stuff, we should talk about what our listeners can do. And what I would find frightful is if no one liked or subscribed to our podcast. And luckily that's not happening. We're getting some good feedback, but keep it coming, guys. So
yeah,
5 stars helps us out. A positive review helps us out even more. And hey, if you write some kind words, you can also throw in a suggestion for a future episode, which is exactly what someone just did, Jim. So we're going to transition to an upstate update.
Man, listen, this was a great one, man.
Yeah.
I check to see our review section every once in a blue. And I was delighted to be greeted this Thursday, so yesterday, or I'm not sure.
It would be at the time of recording a few days ago. At the release, it will be a little over a week ago. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say this has got to be a week ago. Yeah, the time is relative here at Understanding Upstate. So last week, if you're listening to this, I was greeted by a 5-star review.
Wow.
Yeah, huge. That's incredible. Thank you very much. Titled Western New York Newbie, WNY Newbie from Gammon C. Thank you very much, Gammon C, for writing in. And Gammon took the time to write this. I love this show for learning about my new home. I discovered this show on a long drive moving from Texas to Western New York, and I was instantly hooked. Recommendation, please do an episode on understanding lacrosse. Well, Gammon, just want to say, Gammon C, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to tap in with us. Welcome to upstate New York, baby. The weather's you're gonna see quite a different shake of weather here, my friend. That's I hope you're prepared for that.
Sure. Sure.
And we have noted your request for a Understanding Lacrosse episode. We have certainly put that in the file.
Man, what a 311 kind of response. We've noted we've noted your request. We'll respond at a future date.
We'll get to that as soon as we can. But we want to say thank you for tapping in with us. Very dope. And if you want to be like Gammon C,
I mean, this is the way to do it. This is textbook. I don't know if anyone has followed our instructions exactly to the T, like Gammon C. Should be Gammon T, baby. That's all I'm saying.
It is. He went all the way in, and we appreciate that. So get like him and drop us a review, por favor.
I mean, also, my God, what a long drive.
That's a long drive, man. Regardless of where in Texas, it's still going to be a hot minute you're going to be driving.
Well, Jim, we've got a hot episode today. Just to kind of give a look at exactly what we're going to be talking about. There are tons of horror movies, either filmed or set in upstate New York. We talked about like A Quiet Place 1 and 2 were both filmed and set around Western New York, I think particularly around Buffalo. There's cult classics like Sleepaway Camp that were filmed upstate. You've got the classic genre of city slickers, Vacation Upstate, and horror ensues, such as like 1979's Savage Weekend. There's countless movies like that have been made for decades upon decades. But I really wanted to take a look specifically at some of upstate New York's direct or indirect influence on horror films, not just where upstate New York is the location, but upstate New York is a source for movies, right? Which is, it's a particular delineation between those two, but as we get into it, you'll kind of, I think we'll understand what I'm going for here.
Which is great, because that's part of our title.
Yeah, absolutely.
That helps.
So let's get into our first bit here about Cropsey and the Burning. So Cropsey is it's actually an urban legend. So this is kind of a nice transition from last week's episode. I think we talked about it off mic maybe like last week or so. But you're not familiar with the legend of Cropsey, if I'm recalling correctly, right, Jim?
That is true. I am not familiar with this.
So it's more, and we'll talk all about this in a second, but colloquially, Cropsey is now known as a Staten Island urban legend. However, Cropsey started upstate, so we'll kind of get into it. So if anyone's familiar with it, just to clear the air, if anyone is familiar with Cropsey, there's a documentary that came out a little while ago. Again, it's all focused in Staten Island. Cropsey, actually from upstate New York. So let's get into it. So The Burning, it's a 1981 slasher film directed by Tony Maylam, starring Brian Matthews, Leah Ayres, Brian Backer, Larry Joshua, and Lou David. Probably all names no one's familiar with.
I mean, a lot of first and last names, or first names as last names.
Oh yeah,
here.
Brian
Larry
Matthews.
Joshua,
Yeah.
Lou David, Brian Matthews. Yeah,
for sure.
Don't trust any of these people on this,
true.
right?
Well, it seems like the film industry didn't trust any of them because I don't think any of them went on to have very large careers. But we'll get to some people that did, who are actually also in this movie. The plot follows a summer camp caretaker who is horribly burnt from a prank gone wrong, where he seeks vengeance at a nearby summer camp years later. The film marks the debut of actors Jason Alexander, Fisher Stevens, and Holly Hunter, which is pretty crazy. Holly Hunter's in, like, she doesn't have any speaking roles, but she's definitely, like, around as a camper. Fisher Stevens and Jason Alexander both play campers. Jason Alexander, who's, like, only he's, like, not that far off from being in Seinfeld. He's playing a high school camper. It's really weird.
Well, also the 80s were very notorious for like high schoolers that looked like they were in their mid-20s.
For sure. Which I think Jason Alexander was. Holly Hunter and Fisher Stevens were both a little bit younger, I believe. The film is an international co-production between the U.S. and Canada. So it's based on the urban legend of the Cropsey Maniac. The screenplay was written by Weinstein, and Peter Lawrence from a story conceived by producer Harvey Weinstein. Ooh.
You can tap that Wikipedia if you want to learn about what he was up to for a while.
We'll get into it a little bit more. We'll get there. More at the end of this. But I think at this point we're all familiar with the Harvey Weinstein's legacy. Tony Malum and Brad Gray, all producers on the film. Rick Wakeman of the progressive rock band Yes composed the score, and this kind of tracks. This makes sense because the Weinstein brothers got their start as music promoters in Buffalo. And I'll say, if you like prog rock, this album rules. It's great. It's a really good soundtrack. It's worth checking out. You can find it on YouTube. So the Burning was theatrically released on May 8th, 1981 by Filmways. Its critical reception was largely unfavorable, with many film critics deriding its similarities to Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2 and its graphic violence. I'll say critics in general hated slasher movies of this era. Like, it's not that noteworthy, but people did find it derivative of like Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2. And like, there's 1,000 movies like this, right? All stemming out of Carpenter's Halloween for the most part. Let's see. However, it has since become a cult classic and received positive reappraisal from film critics. So let's get into the legend first, right? We'll get more into the production of the movie, which was actually shot in upstate New York, in and around Buffalo. So the Cropsey Maniac legend is told by an actual camp counselor. I did a lot of digging. This comes from Lee Herring, who's a professor emeritus of English at Brooklyn College, and Mark Breselman, who conducted field work to get accurate retellings of this legend in 1977 for a journal called New York Folklore. So early 70s, the Cropsey kind of legend comes about. These guys go out and get retellings, and this one's from a camp counselor, actual camp counselor. So this is like as legit as we can possibly get. So this is from the article here. Children in New York summer camps yearly learn or hear again the story of the Cropsey Maniac, a respected member of the community whose insane desire to avenge an accidental death prompts him to stalk the outskirts of the camp property as a revenant. The camper who strays off the grounds needs to beware of Cropsey, who is probably carrying an axe. Here's a sample text collected from Peter Sherman, a former camper and counselor at Camp Lakota on Maston Lake of Wurtsboro, New York. And the story follows as this. George Cropsey was a judge. He had a wife and 2 children, all of whom he loved very much. He owned a small summer cottage along the shores of Maston Lake. His wife and children would go there for the summer months, and he would come up to visit them on the weekends. One night, 2 campers snuck away from the camp's secluded evening activity and went down to the lake to roast some marshmallows. The fire they built went out of control. There was a big fire on the lake. George Cropsey's family was burnt to death. When Cropsey read the report in the newspaper, it said he became completely white and disappeared from his home. 2 weeks later, one of the campers from Lakota was found near the lake, chopped to death with an axe. There was talk of closing the camp for the remainder of the summer, but they didn't.
No, just kept going.
Yeah.
even after the homicide.
Okay.
Okay.
The camp owners insisted upon constant supervision of the campers. There were state troopers posted in the area, and each counselor slept with either a knife, an axe, or a rifle.
Wow.
This is again a campfire story. This is great. One night at about 3 a.m, one of the counselors was awakened by the screams of one of his campers. He put a flashlight in the direction of the screams and saw his camper bleeding to death, and standing over him, a man with chalk white hair, red bloodshot eyes, and swinging a long, bloody axe. When the maniac saw the light, he ran from the bunk, but the counselor chopped at his leg with a hatchet he was armed with. The man got away but left a trail of blood into the woods. The state troopers were called and followed the trail into the woods. They called to Cropsey to surrender, but all they heard was crazed laughter. They determined his position, and when he would not give himself up, they built a circle of fire around him. When the fire had subsided, they searched the woods for remains but could find nothing. The police closed the file on George Cropsey, assuming him to be dead. It is said that on the evening of the anniversary of the death of Judge Cropsey's family, you can see the shadow of a man limping along the shores of Maston Lake.
Oof.
Pretty great little story, right? Campfire story. And I found a really good... There's a lot of academic articles about this story. It was a huge New York-specific story. We'll talk a little bit about this next article where basically kids from the city go upstate for summer camp. They hear this story and bring it back to the city year and year again. It's like an upstate export. It's told at these regional camps and kind of brought back to the city, and it gets mapped onto real tragedy in Staten Island in kind of a crazy way. Which again, I want to kind of clear up that, or not clear up, but bring light to that association. Where again, it started here in the 70s, and then more so in the 80s when actually scary shit is happening in Staten Island. It gets applied there because all these kids hear a story about this crazed man going after children. So let's go to this academic article titled "The Cropsey Maniac" from the University of Missouri. Shall we?
Let's do it. A perennial story in New York summer camps is the Cropsey Maniac legend, a story about a respected member of the community who becomes insane with desire to avenge the accidental death of his family and stalks the outskirts of the camp property. Herring and Breslman collected variants from New York City informants about the Cropsey Maniac, which consistently a New York State story that is transmitted to summer camps. In addition to summer camp, some of Herring and Breslman's informants first hear the Cropsey legend at a residential school. Herring and Breslman found each variant was localized to where the informants first heard it.
So like if you go to XYZ camp out of Buffalo, that's where the maniac is, right? It's always specific to like lake you're at or whatever, right?
Right. He travels. He's a travel murderer.
Yeah, sure. Door to door.
Yeah.
Lake to lake, I guess.
Lake to lake, right. The 1981 slasher movie, The Burning, can be considered another variant of the Cropsey legend. Before the release of this film, the Cropsey legend was largely unknown outside of areas local to New York, as the legend has always been orally transmitted at various camps. Filmmakers Harvey and Bob Weinstein Gross, who wrote and produced the film, are native New Yorkers and base the character Cropsey off of the legendary Cropsey Maniac. Cropsey is a 2009 documentary that examines the Cropsey legend and the relation to 5 missing children on Staten Island in the 70s and 80s. The documentaries are native to Staten Island, New York, and recall hearing the Cropsey legend in the neighborhoods as children. Their variant of the Cropsey legend is localized to Staten Island, as Cropsey is said to reside in the tunnels under the abandoned Willowbrook Mental Institution on Staten Island and lurk in the nighttime with an axe waiting to snatch away disobedient children. Several informants interviewed in this documentary remember first hearing some variant of the Cropsey legend at summer camp. In the interview of Dr. Bill Ellis in the Cropsey documentary, he suggests Cropsey was the generic term for maniac in the New York State camps at the time and could easily be associated with any maniac kidnapping children off the street in this area. The film does not look for the historical origins of the urban legend, but rather shows the power of a legend to spread ideas. Cropsey explores the belief in the 80s Staten Island that the Cropsey Maniac could represent a real person and the coming together of the community to search for missing children and protect other children from harm.
So yeah, they don't mention the guy's name. I forget it off the top of my head. It's like Andre something, but there was a guy running around Staten Island who was like abusing and kidnapping children. And again, because that's what kids associated, that name Cropsey, they already associated with that. It kind of got mapped on as it's not even like legend. It was a real thing that happened. Not so much him living in the tunnels under the abandoned mental institution, but kind of this weird remapping of an urban legend onto actual events, distilled through upstate New York. But we're not understanding Staten Island, thank God. We are understanding upstate. So let's get back to the film, The Burning, shall we?
Sure. So we'll talk a little bit about the film and its production. So he said in the 80s, a Harvey Weinstein gross was desperate to break into the movie business. Weinstein and producing partner Michael Kohler recognized the success of low-budget horror films such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and began swapping horror stories. Having heard stories about the Cropsey legend when he was a young camper in upstate New York, Weinstein brought the idea to Cole, and who loved it. The project was initiated before the popularity of Sean S. Cunningham's sleeper hit Friday the 13th, with Harvey Weinstein creating a 5-page treatment in 1979 under the title The Cropsey Maniac and registering it in April of 1980, a full month before Cunningham's film was released. Coincidentally, at the same time, director Joseph Ellison also had a film in pre-production under the title The Burning, but changed it to the name Don't Go in the House.
What much worse name.
Sure. Yeah, and also very direct instruction.
Sure.
To avoid confusion with Weinstein's film. The production also bore similarities to another slasher movie in pre-production, a film that would become known as Mad Men. In summer of 1980, during a casting call for Mad Men, one of the actresses commented that her boyfriend was acting in The Burning. This prompted Mad Men to change its entire premise, which was built around the Cropsey legend. Man, just a lot of overlap here.
Which it then would go on to be filmed on Long Island.
There you go. This led to the delay in its filming until October of 1980, which proved costly as it didn't receive a theatrical release until January of 82. The oversaturation of genre films competing with each other was one of the side effects of the early 80s slasher boom. So, Cole told Variety that he, Weinstein, and producer Corky Berger took an early version of the script to the 1980 Cannes Film Festival, where it was well received, although they rejected initial 6-figure offers, hoping to land more money once the film had been shot. Huh.
Man, they should have taken that 6-figure deal.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's woof. That's some cojones on that.
Yeah, dude.
This was a similar approach to how Friday the 13th earned distribution with Paramount Pictures. British director Tony Maylam, known for rock music documentaries in the 70s, was hired as The Burning's director in the summer of 1980. Maylam had met Weinstein and Berger while the producers worked as rock promoters. The Weinsteins and Maylam also secured the services of makeup supremo Tom Savini, who they flew to Pittsburgh to meet. Savini had worked on such films such as Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Maniac, Eyes of a Stranger. Savini turned down the chance to work on Friday the 13th Part 2, ostensibly because he could not understand the logic that Jason was fully grown and was now the killer, as well as what was described as miscommunications with the film's backer. He also said that he liked the script of The Burning more.
Which Tom Savini is a huge name in horror makeup, and like he's directed now, and he's like a real large figure in the genre. So another big name tied to this, pretty small film.
Well, And I do love how he couldn't understand how Jason was a grown-up.
Spoiler alerts for Friday the 13th, the original. Do you know who the killer is?
I do. It's the mom.
It's the mom! And
Yeah.
he's just he's a dead boy at the bottom of a lake.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make much sense that he's the killer in future ones, but hey, you know what? I mean, look, Tom Savini had some scruples. Not enough scruples not to work with the Weinsteins.
Sure.
You know, who knew at that point, probably, but he liked The Burning. That's all I know.
Said, just can't jump through the hoops that this kid dead is now.
Can't get there.
Couldn't get there.
Yeah.
So here's a quote on The Burning's reception in Buffalo, brought to us from Hysteria Lives from the UK. According to Variety, the film did especially well in Buffalo, near where it had lensed. In July of 1981, Variety described its performance as sizzling, saying it lit up Buffalo area screens this weekend. The film played 3 theaters plus 2 drive-ins, bringing in an impressive $33,000.
It's pretty good for a weekend. Shit.
And that's 1981 money.
Yeah, dude.
Variety went on to say, locally produced and filmed, the movie benefited from a lot of TV and print publicity plus fairly decent notices. It had the fright market almost all to itself, as some 7 other horror flicks moved out on a Thursday. Quite where the positive notices remains a mystery, as you'll see later on. Regardless, local opening interest soon fizzled, and the film suffered a more than 50% drop the following week.
Rough. But still more than 15K?
Sure.
It's not chump change. So as we kind of mentioned, it was filmed in the area. So it was shot in the late summer of 1980 around Buffalo and North Tonawanda. Much of the filming took place in and around existing summer camps to give it an authentic look while keeping costs down. The cast wore their own clothes throughout the production. Many of the cast were local to New York areas, or to the New York area, and were aware of the Cropsey legend. Pretty cool.
That is against SAG rules.
Wearing your own clothes.
You got to provide wardrobe, man, or you got to pay them, or you got to pay.
Got it.
Maybe they paid.
That makes sense.
Anyway,
if you're, I didn't know that. That makes sense. Yeah, don't make people wear their own clothes.
Nope. No. You gotta or pay or give them money.
Right.
You gotta compensate them for bringing their own wardrobe.
Yep.
If they're SAG, of course.
Right.
But who knew? I wasn't there.
Sure. And yeah, I watched this movie like almost a month ago now. And it, like, if you like slasher movies, I would say it's worth checking out. There's enough going on with, like, the soundtrack's pretty great. The effects are good. The story's fine. But what I really liked about it is seeing upstate New York in it. Like, there's some beautiful scenery in it, which is it's great. It's just fun seeing upstate New York on camera. So let's see. Oh, and then interestingly, you can visit the campground where this was filmed. So I found this from Fangoria magazine last August 2024. Let's see. Onset Cinema is taking The Burning fans to Camp Blackfoot this summer. Fans of the 1981 slasher will have the opportunity to watch The Burning where it was filmed in Ransomville, New York at the Stonehaven Nature Preserve. Also known as Camp Blackfoot in the movie. The special event will take place on Saturday, August 3rd in New York, Niagara region at the former camp where the majority of the movie was filmed. Partake in the walking tour of the burning filming locations, s'mores by the campfire, and of course, a screening of the movie near the lake. Basically, I think the city of Ransomville or the county purchased the camp, which had been privately owned forever, and turned it into a nature preserve. So it's just public land now. You can go check it out.
Okay.
So go watch the movie and then go visit the actual location. To kind of bring us to a close, some closing thoughts on The Burning. So not only has this film gained cult status among horror fans, it was also the origins for what would become one of the largest and most dominant production companies and Hollywood studios in the world, which is Miramax. This is the first movie from Miramax, aside from they put out before this a Paul McCartney concert movie. So just, I wouldn't call that like a film, but like a live concert production, which is pretty crazy. Miramax, thousands of famous movies are on their roster. It would also serve as a beginning for one of the largest sexual predators in the industry, even with a credible allegation stemming from the production of this film.
Damn.
The long legacy in multiple ways. And I'll add as a side note, Jim, we have 2 episodes dealing with the film industry in upstate New York. I think a general one, and then specifically one talking about the film industry in Buffalo. And we did not catch that Miramax was founded in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I do not want to do an Understanding Harvey Weinstein episode.
So I think we understand it. I think it's there's that's pretty straightforward.
Sure.
But we get it.
But long story short, Buffalo served as a staging ground for Miramax, and there is some interesting history there. But this is probably the most we'll talk about. As a final note, I think one of my favorite parts of this film is the final thing you see on screen is filmed in Western New York.
Yeah, that's right, man. Shout out to you, Gammon. See, that's for you, baby. You got to go check that movie out, dude.
Yep. But yeah, I think it's on Tubi for free. Don't pay to watch it. Go check it out for free. If it's still available for free on a streaming service. Jim, that brings us to our next topic. This is we've got like 2 big topics and then a couple some smaller ones we're tossing in at the end. This next one is dealing with what I am calling the horror laureate of upstate New York.
Okay. Well, that would be Lee Brown Coy, who was born July 24th, 1907, and died September 5th, 1981, 3 days after my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
3 days after I was born. Was an American artist, and the reason was because they couldn't have both of us on the earth.
Too much greatness.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it boiled down to. Coy is probably best remembered for his black and white illustrations for pulp magazines and horror fiction, but he produced a variety of works in other media.
And he wrote some stories, too, some horror stories.
There we go. Coy was born in Syracuse, New York, and as a young man lived nearby in Tully. He spent his entire life in the central New York area. He and his wife, Ruth, lived in Syracuse for many years, where Coy's activities included teaching adult art classes, working under the Works Progress Administration to paint a mural in Cazenovia High School in 1934, since destroyed, advertising for the WSYR broadcasting system in upstate New York, producing a variety of commissioned works. The Coys settled in Hamilton, New York in 1959, where Lee went to work for Sculptura, a small company that reproduced antique sculptures. The move to Hamilton allowed Coy to fulfill his ambition of returning to a small town and maintaining his own art studio. Coy was almost entirely self-taught as an artist, and his entire life was devoted to art-related work. As a young man, he attended one semester of night art classes, but his artistic knowledge and abilities came from many years of work and a thorough study of nature. His astute knowledge of body parts developed from his studies of anatomy and his work as a medical illustrator. He spent time attending operations and autopsies, thus becoming extremely familiar with the human body, assembled or not. And that is a fucking wild sentence.
Yeah, dude.
That sentence in and of itself.
Yep.
Wow.
So he did a lot of think I may have abridged some of this, but he did a lot of macabre illustrations for like H.P. Lovecraft editions of short stories, a lot of short story magazines, pulp. We mentioned like pulp literature at the time. There were a lot of pulp magazines too. And he did some. They're like really cool, stylized, very macabre, just cool illustrations. Just to interject quickly.
Sure. No, that is salient information here. One recurring feature in Coy's work is the motif of wooden sticks, often in lattice work-like patterns. This was inspired by a 1938 discovery in an abandoned farmhouse. Coy had returned to the North Pitcher, New York area where he spent much of his childhood. While wandering deep in the woods, Coy discovered an abandoned farmhouse. This seems like a bad idea, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Boards and pieces of wood, which had been set perpendicular to one another, surrounded the site. Neither inside nor out, Coy could find an explanation for the presence of these crossed sticks. In the years following, Coy remained interested in the significance of his discovery. When Coy returned to the site in 1963, there was nothing left of the building or the sticks. The area had suffered severe flooding, and he had never found out why the sticks were there or who it was that arranged them in such a manner. Because of the strangeness of the entire experience, these forms never left Coy, and they appear in many of his paintings and illustrations. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually. It gets more interesting, actually. Believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The incident also inspired Coy's friend Carl Edward Wagner to write the award-winning story, Sticks. I do see how that is.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, tell us more of the origins of Sticks and its influence.
Yeah, so Coy basically, again, he's working with a lot of authors, right? I think Carl Edward Wagner... He did write this story, Sticks, but he was more of a publisher, if I'm remembering correctly, and compiling, compile short stories and horror and publish them, right? And then contract Coy to make illustrations for those. But let's get a little bit into this story, Sticks, the seemingly innocuous story, Sticks. And this comes from a website called tellersofweirdtales.blogspot.com. It's a blog that I think has some of the best readily available information on Coy that I could find. There's a couple books, but they're hard to get and hard to find. Anyway, let's see what this blog has to say. After the Blair Witch Project came out in 1999, some viewers who are familiar with weird fiction noticed a similarity between the plot of the movie and that of Carl Edward Wagner's story Sticks from 1974, which had been wildly popular, was published a bunch of times in collections. Similarity, I think, is too mild of a word in this case. My guess is that the filmmakers of the Blair Witch Project knew of Sticks and were at the very least inspired by the story. It might be more accurate to say that the Blair Witch Project is essentially an adaptation of Sticks, a free adaptation perhaps, but an adaptation nonetheless. That's not to take away from the Blair Witch Project. By itself, the movie is a fine work of the imagination, not so much in the story as in the way it is told.
Yes. Fucking terrifying.
Sure, yeah.
To this day. Jesus Christ. When that movie came out, man.
It's all anyone could. I mean, I was in 99. Was I in middle school yet? No, I was in like elementary school, and people were talking about it.
I mean, it goes to show how old I am, but I definitely saw that in the fucking theaters and was like, this is, you couldn't move.
Sure.
You couldn't move after it. It was incredible. Just the way they shot that.
No, it's left a lasting footprint.
And I just want to say this really quickly, even just as far as like the promotion of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Right, because this was totally billed as real.
I was going to say at the time, yeah.
And if I recall correctly, and any Speedy Freak or Rattlesnake P is welcome to fact check me on it, but there wasn't a lot of script for these actors.
Oh.
Like this was going off of just prompt and like them just kind of actually being fucking terrified.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very just kind of like unconventional way of shooting a film.
Yep. Yeah.
And like, I think there was a lot of what they were experiencing. They didn't know what they were going to be, and that this was a lot of natural reaction they were getting.
That makes
sense. Which
makes
makes total fucking sense because god damn it, that was terrifying. Anyway.
Let's see. Let's jump back in here. Moreover, we should remember that Styx itself is an adaptation of a tale told by Lee Brown Coy about a supposedly real experience he had in the spring of 1938 along Man Brook in central New York State. Coy's experience is not so remote from Wagner's composition of Styx. However, for Coy apparently didn't write down or publish an account of it until 1963, after a quarter century had passed. Carl Edward Wagner fictionalized Coy's tale a little more than a decade later. In the early 1960s, Lee Brown Coy began writing a newspaper column called Chips and Shavings in the Mid-York Weekly. I tried so hard to find the entire column. I only found an excerpt, which we'll get to, but it will suffice. That published in Hamilton, New York. According to his biographer, Coy wrote about folklore, unusual bits of history, and people. So like super regional little column in his very regional newspaper. In a series of 5 columns from August 22nd to September 26, 1963, Coy recounted his experience along Man Brook a quarter century before, or of patterns of stones and stick lattices around an abandoned house in the scrub woods of Shenango County. Woo!
That is right next door to Broome County,
yeah,
baby.
It's right there. And of a hand that had reached out of the dark and grasped the startled artist, who, like a Lovecraftian protagonist, fled the cellar of the house for his safety and sanity. So again, he details a story in kind of like, where the Blair Witch Project is I don't want to call it a mockumentary because that usually means it's like comedy, but funny, it's like a fake. It's shot like POV handheld style. It's presented as a documentary, right? And interestingly enough, the original story is presented, quote, a series of letters and phone calls that reveal some unfamiliar facts and local folklore. So it's like still like a documentarian kind of approach in writing. As he's retelling his own story, which again then gets turned into Styx by Wagner and then further distilled, allegedly. There's multiple people saying like there's too many similarities for it not to have inspired it. I think it's safe to say it served some inspiration for Blair Witch Project.
That final scene, man, fucking A. Well, it's like there's like a dude standing in the corner, and I actually went back and watched the final scene like pretty recently, and like just because like I was like, what the fuck happened at the end of that movie?
Yeah,
and then I did, and like there's one of the other characters in the movie there's one who's like gone missing and like what happened to him, and then there's the other one who's now just like at the end of the movie they're in a basement, he's standing in a corner, and like the person with the camera is like screaming his name, and then you see the camera just fall on the ground.
Yep.
And the reason was because the folklore was that like this guy kidnapped children and would make one stand in the corner and then kill the other one.
Right.
And then so that happened again, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. Jesus. Ay caramba.
Well, let's... you go ahead. Sorry.
That's it, man. That's all I got for that motherfucker. Woo, doggy. All right.
Ooh, here's something spooky. We're recording this on October 28th. This article... October 28th, 1962.
Yeah. Holy shit, dude.
So this is, again, from Chips and Shavings by Lee Brown Coy. Again, a series of letters and phone calls that reveal some unfamiliar facts and local folklore. Hamilton, New York, October 28th. Dear John, since our last talk, an experience I had some years ago comes to my mind, and realizing your interest in strange and unusual circumstances, it might well be added to your already impressive accumulation of the bizarre and unconventional. As near as I can recollect, it must have happened in the spring of 1938. I was trout fishing on a little-known stream south and west of De Ruyter. Do you know De Ruyter?
I've never heard of this place before in my
De
life.
Ruyter? I might be saying it wrong. De Ruyter, New York. It was a fine, clear stream, but difficult to fish due to dense outcroppings of bushes in some areas and long stretches of open water in others. They were hard to get at without being seen. But in spite of this and the fact that it was all strange to me, the spirit of Isaac hovered near, and I was getting fish. Throughout the course of the brook, at least as far as I fished it, there was the remains of an old railroad embankment. No vestige of tracks or ties, but an embankment, sure enough, with some beautiful little dry wall culverts spanning the stream as it wound through the little valley. To one of my particular temperament, it seemed eerie, the grade running straight and true through what is virtually a wilderness. Large trees grew from the embankment itself and throughout the right of way, but I could picture an old wood burner with a conical stack steaming along and dragging 2 or 3 wooden coaches behind. This in itself made the trip a little more exciting than an ordinary fishing excursion, but it was what I found later that makes it a genuinely unique experience. As you start from a little bridge, the valley along the brook is fairly open pasture land, but a half mile toward the east, it begins to get thick with second growth overgreens and scrub apple trees. Beyond these, it gradually becomes quite dense forest for perhaps 2 miles, and then breaks abruptly into a large clearing and pasture again. So now we have a very thorough explanation of the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
As I started to work into the scrub growth, I noticed a strange pattern of stones lying on the ground. There were flat stones as if taken from a stone wall or from one of the many railroad culverts. In size, I would guess the patterns was 20 by 15 feet, and at first glance appeared to be the ground plan of a house with walls and partitions. Sort of a giant architect's drawing, but on examination, it was more like a maze. I'm depending entirely on my memory, sometimes not too accurate, but I remember studying it carefully when I came back upstream to the road. It was very maze-like, but as mazes go, not very complex. Further on, things began to happen. If old Isaac hadn't been there with me, there would have been no fish. There were all sorts of strange contraptions, sticks from trees and bits of boards nailed and wired together in fantastic array. I cannot describe them adequately, so we'll have to draw pictures. Sometimes these structures were stuck in a pile of stones or a stone wall. Sometimes even they were nailed in trees. It cuts off here, so we're jumping forward a little bit. It's just like it's kind of a bad scan.
Right.
Let's see. The lawn and the trees and even the house were covered with these structures, these little stick contraption structures, which look like weird mishmashed ladders, is the best way I would describe it. So he found this house, and there was, I believe, like a cellar, right? I went inside, and on the walls in some of the rooms were drawings, what appeared to be charcoal, of these weird abstract concoctions. The drawings were applied directly to the walls, that is, right on the wallpaper and plaster. Some of them covered a whole wall, huge, fantastic murals. I looked around for a while and then fished the brook back upstream to my car. A farmer was working near the road, and I asked him who had lived up there. He had no information to give. No one had lived there since he had been around. The land had been taken over by the state, and he had never been up that way. So, John, for what it's worth, here is a first-hand account of a little mystery that you can ponder. I say this at first. I thought it was the work of children, but it was far too sophisticated for that. What is your guess? Is it the work of a crazy person or the wild creation of an educated idiot? Oh, boy. You can figure that out right when you get a chance. Best, Lee. And then we get an excerpt from a phone conversation where basically someone who is trying to find megalithic structures in northeastern New York, northeastern U.S. and like upstate New York. Thought that these stick and stone structures might be that, like from ancient civilizations. Something like real, like kind of quack historian ism, but like, you know, giving it's kind of this spooky atmosphere. Anyway, that's the excerpt I have from it. Again, this gets turned into this story where someone comes across these sticks and they eventually go into a basement and a witch like grabs their arm and they get the hell out of there, right?
Yeah.
So it's this. I really like both of these stories because they're this very specific distillation of like upstate New York legends and experiences that get funneled into film over years and decades, right? And have this kind of lasting influence. And even Styx was directly referenced as an inspiration for these lattice stick structures and part of the HBO show True Detective. It's, again, the story Styx, much more famous than Lee Coy Brown's like regional articles, right? But again, if we kind of look back, that's the origins, the upstate origins of.
Interesting.
And like in Blair Witch, there's like these cairns, which is like stacked stones, right? That kind of like mysteriously appear, and like there's a lot of connections through like these weird structures and stuff.
And that's what makes it so scary. Like that's what makes it fucking terrifying. Yeah. So you're just like, well, how the fuck did this get here?
Yep.
Because this wasn't,
weird shit in the woods, dude. That gets me every time.
Perfect. That's a perfect recipe. Yep. Weird shit in the woods will do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That will get the proverbial job done.
Indeed. All right, so we got a couple two quick rapid fire topics here. Should we talk about a professor on Elm Street, Jim?
Indeed. This comes to us from the Hill News. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Potsdam, New York, October 24th, 2024. One of the most iconic horror films of the 1980s, A Nightmare on Elm Street, has historical ties to the area unbeknownst to many. The director of the film, Wes Craven, used to teach down the road. He was a humanities professor at Clarkson University in the mid-1960s. According to Craven himself, he and a group of students began a film club during his time at Clarkson. In fact, parts of A Nightmare on Elm Street are speculated to be inspired by a short film that a group of students made involving an abandoned fraternity house at the end of the road. This house was taken down in 2010 by the town of Potsdam to the disappointment of many residents, according to North Country Public Radio. When comparing the fraternity house and the house used in the film, there are some subtle similarities. Another fun fact about the film, the original script included the town name Madstop, which spells Potsdam backwards. This interesting Easter egg eventually changed to Springwood before filming. Craven later went on to create more horror classics, including Scream 1 through 4, The Hills Have Eyes, and Cursed, becoming one of the most prominent directors in the genre. While Craven never confirmed the Potsdam Connection conspiracy theories, they definitely left their mark on local history. How could they not?
Yeah.
How could they not?
And not confirmed, but the Mad Stop Potsdam thing seems credible. So Wes Craven was a professor, and he again oversaw that club. I think that like film club for students at the age of 29, and I was like, oh, I like movies. I want to do movies. So he moved from Potsdam to New York City, and at the age of 29, relatively late, to just go into the film industry as a director, right? Writer and director.
Right.
And then, came out with, I think, first The Hills Have Eyes. Like, that's definitely before Nightmare on Elm Street. And, like, he made it work. Potsdam probably some inspiration for A Nightmare on Elm Street, but his time at Clarkson University directly inspired him to.
That's pretty dope, man.
Go on to pursue his dreams. So there we go.
Follow your dreams, only if you're good at them.
Jim, I think you mean follow your screams.
Hey, woo, man.
Pretty good.
Good one.
Pretty good.
Good one.
Well, I got a good one here to bring it on home, and this is it brings us full circle because this relates to Champ, who's going to Hollywood. Jim, do you remember Champ from Lake Champlain?
I do.
One of our, we of course talked about Champ on episode 52 of Understanding Upstate, the mythical aquatic monsters episode, which there are many in upstate New York. But yeah, Champ hails from Lake Champlain in upstate New York, and just learned. I think my mom discovered this actually.
Love it.
And pointed out that. So there's are you familiar with Creepshow, the movies? Yep. So they rebooted it, which I didn't know, a few years ago, I think on Shudder as a mini series, or just as a TV series rather, still, just different, it's like 2 short stories each episode kind of thing. And season 2, episode 6, is a story called By the Silver Water of Lake Champlain. And it features Champ. They call him Champy more in the show. But it's directed by Tom Savini, who we talked about at the top of the episode with The Burning, who did the special effects. He's the guy that didn't like the story of Friday the 13th Part 2.
Couldn't get his head around it. Could not. Nope. Could not.
Nope. But the story was written by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. And it's a fun little, it's, as far as horror goes, it's a little pedestrian. It's like kind of a basic story, but it's a story all about Champ, which I thought is fun. So it's worth checking out. I think it's like 15, 20 minutes. It's a nice little horror ode, to Champ. It's like set in the 80s too. So it's got some fun little like nostalgia setting there. But yeah, I was delighted to find out that Champ made it to the silver screen via the silver water of Lake Champlain. How about
There you go.
There we go. So yeah, Jim, do you think we did it? Do we like tied some inspiration?
Yeah, well, I think this was a nice bookend to our month-long tribute to, and you got an extra episode this year, folks. Mm-hmm. How about that?
Sure did.
As our tribute to upstate horror and upstate spookiness.
Yeah.
So this is a great bookend.
Yeah, we got some things for you to check out. It's Halloween today again. If you're listening to when it came out, you need something to do, throw on The Burning. Throw it on. You got some to-dos from today's episode. Speaking about things to do though, Jim, I feel like we can recommend that all of our listeners go out and like, subscribe, and rate the show. Share an episode with a friend. Hey, hand out QR codes as you're handing out treats. Maybe not to kids, but to their parents. Right. Their parents might like this podcast. So, guys, help us out. Again, that does us wonders. Again, keep throwing us suggestions. We've noted lacrosse. We've added it to the doc. Mm-hmm. I've actually taken a cursory look at the topic already. So, already doing some legwork. But yeah, that helps us out a lot. And again, we love doing topics that Speedy Freaks and Rattlesnake Pete's want us to talk about. And that's a great way to do it. Also, email us at understandingupstate@gmail.com. It's a great way to shoot us recommendations as well. Speaking about shooting recommendations out to people, Jim, do you have any things you want to recommend to our listeners?
Do I ever? All right. Let's say you're wandering around the woods, right? And you find some fucking creepy ass sticks for no reason. Just they're just there, but they're in too meticulous of a pattern for it to not be man-made. Mm-hmm. You don't know how it got there, but you are scared out of your mind. Well, you're like, what can bring me down? What is a good way to kind of de-escalate the situation? Mm-hmm, well, I got it for you. It's called Upstate Understandings. It is a comedy album. It is available on all digital streaming platforms and also available at jimsearch.bandcamp.com if you want to get the real deal. Got CDs, got tapes, no more vinyl, sold out many moons ago. But if you want to pick up some t-shirts, you can do that as well, all over at jimsearch.bandcamp.com. Go over there and get them. Also, jimsearchcomedy.com is a good place to check me out for shows and things of that nature. And yeah, listen, I can strongly recommend that you email us and review our show and share it and love it and do all the things, because it is a beacon of upstate greatness, if I must say so myself. Rob.
Jim.
They bought, you know what they did? They bought all the tapes.
Wow, yeah.
They bought them all.
That's great.
They just, between me just promoting it, I just checked now. Oh my gosh, I'm out of all of them.
What a windfall.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, huge. This is huge. But yet, they still have money. They're still wanting to spend their money. What is a good way for them to do it, man?
Jim, let's just say it's a beautiful summer morning. Your family is up at they're up at the cabin upstate. You work in the city because you're a judge, so you're reading your morning newspaper and you learn that your family has burned in a tragic fire set by some moronic campers who just wanted to make marshmallows. You have two decisions. First choice: go on a crazy murdering spree with an axe or shears, which is what used in the film The Burning. Or you can sit down, chill the fuck out, throw on my album, New York Sticky, take a beat, and figure out the next steps in life. And I would recommend the latter, not the former, right?
Yeah, don't do that.
So go grab my album. You might not want to listen to my album my EP that just came out titled Cyber Punish, because it's spooky and it might push you in the wrong direction. But hey, if it's Halloween and you need something spooky to listen to, go check that out. Everything's available at brooklynfrequency.bandcamp.com. Jim, having said that, we got to give the listeners a clue about what we're talking about next week.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are stepping out of our spooky season here, folks, and we're stepping into the Cradle of the Union. Folks.
Oh, cool. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm excited for it. I'm also excited for our closing transition. Famously, I love to do a stupid up pun to close us out. Are you ready for it, Jim?
Let's go.
Well, it's Halloween, so I need to get dressed up in my costume so I can go trick-or-treating. Let's get on out of here.
There it is. Understanding Upstate is a podcast hosted by Jim Search and Rob Adler, edited by Rob Adler, and music from Regal Monk.